Sandy?
Jenny?
Howard here.
Denise? Here. Kathy?
Here.
Marion?
Here.
Jimmy?
I'm here.
Joan?
Present.
Mary?
You already said it?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, Michael?
Here.
Corinne is here.
And just for the record, should we also mention that Chris is here? For the parent stuff? Yeah. The next item on our agenda is public comments or anything that is not listed on our agenda. Hearing none, we'll close public comments and we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a review and possibly approval minutes from the June meetings. Has everybody had an opportunity to review and read the minutes?
Yeah, I did. I had a question. I was wondering why Karen Bliss was listed as absent.
There was a certain point in time where I got the okay from the city manager to leave her name, and so before that was
So that takes care of it.
Are there any other comments on the minutes, on the meetings?
I move that the minutes of June 7th and 28th, I vote, be approved as distributed.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. The next item on our agenda is really just an update on the EIR, which is to say that the city council heard the EIR at their council meeting on July 25th, and the council certified the EIR, and so that part of the process is completed. So, not sure if everybody was, or some of us were in attendance and some of us weren't, but I just thought I'd formally bring it up in our meeting and communicate that to everybody. So that's a really terrific thing. I think that the planning department did a good job of meeting the schedule, and LSA did a very complete EIR, and I think the process was good. So, any comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the architect selection process, and I'll let maybe Chris give us an update on that process.
Sure. So I'll give just kind of a really quick recap on the status of the architect selection. The selection committee, upon conclusion of the interviews, met and ranked the firms in order of preference based on the scores from the interviews. The #1 ranked firm was Antoine Predock Architect. The town entered into negotiations with that firm. During that process, that firm asked to withdraw from the selection process due to other firm commitments. The process was otherwise going along just fine with them. They just had other business decisions that they had to make. So we then went to the next ranked firm, which was very closely ranked, right behind Antoine Predock Architect, which was WR&S Studio. We entered into negotiations with them based on their original cost proposal, clarifying the scope, clarifying the assumptions that the firm made for the scope of the project as defined at the time. We've gotten pretty far along with that, and we're ready to take it to council, except that based on discussions with the city manager and others, the decision was made to not yet take the contract to council. So the selection is in the wings, so to speak, and then once things get further along with other related project decisions, then we'll be ready to submit it to council once we get that direction from the town and from the city manager and the city attorney. Any questions? But everything's going just fine. We're about as far as we can be on the selection process, short of taking it to council.
Any questions or comments?
It's basically going to be held up until after the election.
The direction that we have so far is originally there was a concept of taking it to to council sooner, but at this point, we were requested to take it off of the agenda, so.
Okay.
We're ready whenever everyone else is.
Well, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank for everybody who was on the selection committee. It was a lot of work. I think it was really enjoyable. We got some really terrific proposals, and going through them actually was interesting and good, certainly for me. And I think that we worked really well together, and we had a number of firms that were very well qualified, all of which we felt would do a great job, and it was a tough decision, but I just want to thank everybody because it was a lot of work. Thank you.
Could you clarify for me, has the town specifically said that they want to wait until the vote is over before signing a contract with the architects?
And maybe Mike can jump in here, but the only direction that I've had so far was to not, we have a draft staff report, but the decision was made to not take it to the July 25th town council meeting.
I spoke with Teresa yesterday, maybe Tuesday, and basically what her feeling was that we should wait till after the election. So the direction that I received was, let's hold off until after the election, or
Is
after
that-
the election.
Is that a legal opinion or a Teresa's opinion?
I don't think it's illegal.
My thought is that I'd like to understand the difference between this and the town center. Certainly the town center does not have a vote, and the town center has an architect. Given the fact that we've had a committee that has worked for months on this, and we've already had one architect withdraw, albeit ostensibly for reasons having nothing to do with a vote or sentiment in the town, but I think one can read into it, sentiment in the town might well have had something to do with it. Making a contract subject to the vote, and you don't really even have to do that because impossibility nulls the contract in any event. I would wonder if one would not want to sign a contract with people, and you could make it subject to the vote, but at least get them on board so that we don't lose them and they understand that they're there, and we're committed to utilizing them in good faith. They've come forward, they've made a proposal. The committee that went through this process feels that they are the best, and rather than lose them because they feel that we're not interested, at least have some sort of commitment subject to a vote, and then go forward. If not, we have them perhaps thinking that we are not committed to them and we lose them. There's nothing lost in terms of not being able to get out of it if the vote says that we do not go forward with a library in the park. Certainly it's site-specific because that was in the proposal. So we are not in any way committed to utilizing them if the vote turns it down. So I would suggest that this committee requests that the council do put it on an agenda and request that the council do vote on the matter. And if we do need it, ask for a legal opinion as to whether or not that would bind the town in any way to go forward with them if the vote were to say that the town is not in favor of a library in the park, because I feel quite confident that it would not on the basis of a number of scenarios. But I do believe it's important that the architects feel that, and I don't know how you feel about it, but my sense would be that it would be important to the architects to feel that we are committed to them if it is something that the people of the town feel that they want.
And we can plan their workload to
Well,
some degree.
I can address two things that you mentioned broadly. One is that the decision made by Antoine Preduck Architect to withdraw, to my knowledge, had nothing to do with the possibility of a ballot measure. In fact, I don't believe they even had knowledge of the possibility of a ballot measure. Their representation to me, and I have every reason to believe that they were being candid at the time, was that they simply landed two bigger fish and made a business decision, with all respect to the project, that projects based on their assessment of their resources available in their office. I believe that to be true, and I actually told them that I appreciated their being candid as opposed to taking on the project and then becoming overloaded and not being able to provide the service that the town requires. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, really professional.
It was very professional. Secondly, with respect to WRNS, at the time that we were in negotiations with WRNS, the knowledge of the potential ballot measure did exist. And so part of our conversations with WRNS was that in the eventuality that the town elects not to move forward with a decision on their contract until a later date, potentially after the election, would they be willing to, A, will they still be interested in the project, and B, will they still be willing to honor the terms of their proposal? Because it's a matter of about 6 months, and even though that feels like a long time, it's gonna go by quickly. They indicated they would be fully ready to honor all of the terms of their proposal, and so they understand, because they're also coincidentally working on another project in the town, so they're close to the town and, understand a lot of the other events that are going on in the town unrelated to their project at the time. They're willing to hold on to the terms of their proposal and not have any adverse effect on negotiations going forward. I would say that if the process were to go on much longer than that, then we of course would need to evaluate or if the scope of the project or the location of the project were to change, we would then, of course, that would potentially nullify in whole or part the proposal that we have to date. So there's nothing lost, in my opinion, by not engaging or not entering into a contract with the architect. In fact, if we were to enter into a contract with the architect at this point and then the direction of the project were to change, we have a contract that would then potentially need to be amended or terminated. Whereas if we have a proposal that is good for a period of time, that effectively gives us more leverage and the firm will be interested. Of course, there's always the possibility that the circumstances change, but in the event circumstances were to change, even if we had a contract, the firm has the right to withdraw from that contract or terminate that contract. But I don't have, based on my conversations with them, I don't have any reason to believe that that would be the case. All of our discussions with them have indicated a really strong interest in the project, in any project within the town. They like working with the town. They like the idea of working with the committee members, with the community at large. So I think they're excited about working with the project, whatever it becomes.
So you think it's better just to leave it as it is?
I think administratively it'll be a little bit more straightforward, and from a business and from a negotiation standpoint, I think it's acceptable. One thing that I can do is I have a draft proposal from them. I can ask them to indicate in their proposal, if that's one bit of language that's not in there now, but I can easily request to say this proposal is good until December 31st, 2012, or something to that effect. That would be a way to give us all a measure of assurance, and it'll save some administrative process and so forth.
Great, good, terrific, good.
If everybody is comfortable with that, that would be my recommendation.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much, and
Do
Chris,
we
thank
have
you.
to make a motion to approve this recommendation? Or does he just go ahead and do it and by consensus, we just agree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're essentially a recommending body to the council, and so, but it seems at this point it's a matter that's being managed by staff, and I think we're in agreement with
And then
where we're going forward.
the other firms have been notified.
They will be. Mike and I discussed that earlier this week, and I've been, getting the phone call saying, okay, did we get it or not? And so I would like to be able to give people a sense of the disposition of their proposal.
Mike, does that seem acceptable to you, just to extend that language?
I totally agree.
That's your preference? Okay, good. I think it was a good discussion, though, to really understand both sides of it.
Definitely. No,
Good.
there's sort of those forks in the road, and it's good to understand, kind of map them out and see what makes the most sense based on how far we can see right now.
Excellent, thank you.
We'll move on to the next item, which is the library ballot measure. And so I just wanted to clarify really what our discussion is about this morning, because really the ballot measure is out of our hands and it's not within our sort of charter or recommended to council one way or another. But I wanted to take the opportunity this morning to discuss and review sort of our rules of engagement over this measure, and the city attorney provided us some guidelines in terms of what we should be aware of as we go forward over the next couple of months. And I also thought that if we have questions regarding what he wrote, what he's presented to us, that maybe we field our questions to Kathy so that they can be grouped, and because some of them might be similar, and then they can all be answered at the same time, rather than getting in touch with him individually and I think creating more administrative work and sort of lack of clarity. But if we have questions about this that we would have a bill that's put forward to Kathy, and then any and all of the answers would be then distributed to the entire committee. Does that sound like a good idea? Okay.
Basically, we can't be a lobbying group, we can't use anything that we've done as a committee. We have to say totally separate from the ballot measure. As individuals, and totally as individuals, we can work on the ballot measure, but we have to clearly indicate we are working as individuals on the ballot measure. Is that clear?
Can we title ourselves as members of this committee?
So long as you state that it's very clear that you're working as an individual on
Right.
that.
But none of the questions and answer sheets or any of that
You
can
can't
be
use
used.
it if it's a product of this committee. It doesn't mean you can't ask the same questions and answers, but you can't
You
use
can't
that.
take the.
It's that you use public money,
Mhm.
you know, the taxpayers' money for this, and so you can't use it for the ballot measure.
But the information on the committee's website would still stand.
Of course, yeah.
I guess the one question I have is whether or not somebody had a question, where can I get the information? You know, can you refer them to the town's website?
I don't see why you couldn't refer it to the town's website.
So how do you describe, how would you interpret the difference between using steering committee? I'm not sure what the word is.
You're not handing it out, you're simply using it as a reference, just like you could refer them to a library reference source, but you're not taking those materials and
You're
handing them.
distributing them.
Yes,
Got it. But we can reference that.
you're not copying them, you're not using them in your mailers.
Or you don't want to copy and paste language that has been done
No.
or used.
Okay.
Or using any of the logos or
Mm-hmm.
the phrases that we've used. Okay.
I don't know about phrases, because I generated probably some of the phrases myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can use your own mind.
Yeah. I only have 26 letters left.
Now you have to be more creative.
Okay, is there anything else that we should be
No.
alert to keep us
I
set, making sure
think to
that
the
we-
extent we're gonna publish materials, and you have any questions about the materials, I don't think it would hurt to pass it by. You know, if you have a question, to just ask Bill if he or me to take a look at it.
I'm not sure if we can do that, because if we ask, if we're
Probably,
working
that's
as
right.
individuals, and we,
You-
I just don't.
Utilizing
yeah.
a town resource,
Right,
right?
I don't think that.
You probably can't.
If we need a legal opinion, then the group or the individuals that are doing the work, I think, would need to get their own legal opinion on the matter.
So since the Brown Act doesn't apply, four of us could get together
Oh,
and
yes.
talk about it.
So long as you're not getting together as part of this committee, you're getting together as
As
individuals,
On
as
the ballot
part of
measure.
the ballot measure.
Kathy, I'm gonna just, this isn't specifically related to the steering committee, but as a resident who maybe has opinions, again, about other items that may come up, and say that I oppose something, or somebody opposes the library concept in the park, and they say, but council member or steering committee member stated, in quoting somebody, of something that was generated here, you're saying that that's not a permitted use either?
I'm not sure I follow what you're saying.
Well, we can't use any text or any information that we have that the steering committee has generated.
Can
But
the opposition?
Can the opposition use that data in text and say, this is what they come out with and we don't approve, we don't agree with it because of X, Y, and Z? Can they use the data in the text?
Why couldn't they?
I mean, it's public information.
Yeah,
Anything on the website
that's
is
what I'm-
public information.
But that's contrary, I think that's kind of contrary to what Kathy had said previously, if we're treating both sides fairly, equally, not fairly, but equally.
Well, what, we can refer to what is in the public domain in terms of information.
But we
most
can't
of
use
which
it.
You can't use it directly.
But the opposition can.
That's
No,
my
they-
question.
They can't,
Yeah, we can refer to the library materials. We just can't publish them
And
if
pass
we,
them out.
if,
As the committee.
yes, if the committee, whatever that committee is, can't publish it as its own. You can refer, that committee can
And
refer
publish
to
it?
our materials.
So you can pull paragraphs off and use it.
no.
But the opposition can't.
They can refer to,
They
the
can refer
opposition
to it,
could
but they
refer to
can't
those materials
copy
in
it
some way.
Does
Just
the
as that
opposition
committee, the committee that's,
know.
the committee, both the pro and the con in the ballot, with regard to the ballot, could refer to this committee's materials.
Well, let's tie our other hand behind our back.
Well, so, look, I want to get a clarification, and I'm going to repeat this probably a couple of times in maybe different ways, so it's clearer for me to understand. People that don't want the library in the park could publish a piece that they're going to mail out and say,
This committee
the
has
committee
said.
said,
Mhm.
quote, the committee printed, quote, and they quote actual
Mhm.
text from things generated by the steering committee.
Yes. I would think that the committee could also, the committee for the ballot measure could also quote things that this committee has done. But I would be very careful not to quote large portions of what this committee has done, because then you're utilizing its work product as its own. And it's a fine line as to how much you're utilizing of this resource as your own, and then you're using taxpayer dollars to support the proposition. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If
I'm
you-
just
you
trying
know,
to get,
if
I'm
you're
just
just-
trying to
if
see
you're
where,
just using-
I'm
if
trying
you're
to get
just-
where the fine line is, because I could see the opposition.
Well, they may be using, a certain phrase, or, they said that it wasn't going to cause parking congestion. And they quote a line or so by saying it created so many parking places. If we say it creates 72, and so it doesn't create a problem, but if we go on and on and on, and we're quoting paragraph after paragraph after paragraph of our stuff, then it looks like we're utilizing this as if the people in favor of the ballot are utilizing this committee's work product as its own. And you're blending the committee that is in favor of Holbrook Palmer Park, utilizing Holbrook Palmer Park together with this committee, and you're utilizing the work product as its own. I think you have to, the point is, at what point a committee in favor of utilizing the park is not doing its own homework, but instead is using this committee's work product instead.
Could, in a response, could you say, please refer to the traffic studies
Yes.
Yeah.
that on such and
Yes,
such?
I think you could say,
Even though the traffic study was paid for by public
Yes.
funds, you
yeah,
would still.
I think you could refer to the EIR. You could say, the EIR has,
It's a public document.
yes.
Is the same true of town resources? Can you refer to studies done by the town?
Yes.
But you can't pick up any of that material and state the sentence was.
No. Sandy, if there's something specific that the pro committee would want to use, I think the pro committee should speak with one of its members, and maybe one of its members could try and get a clarification as to what, whether or not that would be crossing the line. I think that would be the best thing for the committee to do, is to maybe speak with someone in fair political practices.
I haven't read that
Yeah.
yet. I haven't read this yet. Does the city attorney reference what you're talking about in this?
Yes, but I think when the time comes, that would be the thing to do, speak with fair political
But
practices.
what you're saying is discussed here by,
Yep,
okay, I'll read this and
but
probably.
right now, until we know specifically how much or whatever they're gonna use, I don't know. But that isn't an issue right now for this committee. This committee just has to make sure that we don't cross the lines. If we were to join that committee and sharing what we know as a committee member with them.
For example, wouldn't be appropriate for us when we put out a letter in our FAQs to distribute those at this juncture, because those were prepared with taxpayer money, and that's not something that members of this committee, whether you're acting as an individual or not, would be appropriate to use. Or the report that we prepared for the city council, or copies of the drawings that were prepared by group 4.
See, to me,
really-
all that stuff has been done. It's sitting there. It should be used by anybody who wants to use it.
It can be
Because
referred
it's a
to.
product that has been created, and why take a product that's been created and stick it on the shelf and say no one can use it?
No, but it,
They can't just, we can't just give it to that committee for them to be able to readdress it and send it out to the public. That committee can refer to it all they want, just as any resource in a library, but that committee can't take our work product and use it as its own.
That's
Send it-
plagiarism.
yeah,
In a form.
and it's using taxpayer money to advocate a particular political position.
But if it's open to both sides, whoever wants to use this material to advocate,
Yes, but it would only be used to advocate, because that's what that material does, is advocate. The con side could not use it in the same way, so. It's the law.
It's the law, and because we're members of the committee,
it's a stupid law, but it's okay.
I think there are a lot of reasonable aspects to it, but, what we need to be clear about is, because we're members of a town advisory committee, the standards of sort of behavior, the way we communicate with the community on this, have some restrictions which, aside from our own position here, I can certainly understand being necessary and it's appropriate.
So if the opposition made statements that we knew were not factual because of the research that's been done, we couldn't hand out something that said they're wrong because of these traffic counts, for example. We couldn't list traffic counts showing it, but we could refer to the traffic counts that would be on the website.
Maybe, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Corinne.
I was gonna say, it seems like some people have some questions, so maybe this is a question to take to the city attorney and say, to what extent can individual committee members point to already published public information?
Yes, let me get a clarification.
Well, I just want to make another point, is that if we go to the website that has all the documents for our committee on the town, there are documents there like the Group 4 work and the LSA work that use public monies to generate. There are other documents up there that use volunteer monies and didn't use any public money to create. They weren't paid for by this committee. They're done by the volunteers. And there is totally volunteer time on some of the information that's out there.
But you were doing it within the capacity of a volunteer effort for the town. I think we can clarify that with Bill, but
Yeah.
there was also, to some degree, staff time involved in reviewing some of those documents, putting them up on the website. The town maintains the website, so I think you can
Kathy?
refer to information, but you can't just sort of take a document as if.
Nobody's gonna take a whole
No, but-
document, because everything is gonna have to be done in sound bites and quotes and little sentences here and there, because basically people
People
are
don't
going to
read.
read, and they're not gonna
That's
go
what
to
we need a
refer.
library.
If you say, oh, that's wrong, please refer over here, they're not gonna do that.
I will, I'll ask the city attorney the question and ask him to generate an answer, okay?
You said that his explanation is in this, is that
No,
correct?
it really isn't very clear with regard to material generated by
Got
the
it.
steering committee. So why don't I ask him, and why don't we make sure he gives us the answer? Okay?
Good question, thank you, Sandy. After in the course of reading this, you come up with other questions, and I encourage you to direct them to Kathy, and then the answers will be distributed to the committee.
Okay.
Do you have any other items or discussion on this matter? And then, I think the.
When do we know about the ballot measure? Will Teresa send out a note, or how? Is it going off for being approved, or
Well,
something?
the council
It has been
approved the
I know, but
ballot
then-
measure.
Does it get an official part of the ballot or anything? I mean, what's the next process?
It will get a number, or a letter, usually they get letters. What it will be, I guess she'll know after we decide what's happening with the potential other two ballot measures. So after that's all decided, she'll let us all know.
So are you guys taking any action on this, like setting up a subcommittee or nominating people to work on it, or you're just staying separate?
I don't think you can discuss any of that.
We can only do things as individuals, right?
Yes, that's right. And the only discussion can be about the steering committee right now.
Yeah, I think just this next to the last paragraph, this one, the main concerns have to do, it kind of synthesizes the rest of the 2 pages, I think.
And I think the last last 4 words, personal point of view, that's what we have to stress.
Yeah. We're not advocating as a member of the Atherton Library Building Steering Committee, but we're advocating as a personal point of view. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Cindy, at one point you asked me a question. Use of one's title such as committee member, council member for identification purposes only is
Right.
allowed, but it needs to be clear that such member is not communicating on behalf of such
Right.
local agency.
Personal point of view.
I think I'm gonna, what I just read of a little bit of this, and I'll read it again and digest it, I think
But it
that I'm
really,
clear on what
but it
he's
doesn't
asking.
really talk about the materials question very clearly.
I
so-
think, yeah, the last paragraph, I think, or the second to last, is Joan has brought up that you can't imply or state that the town has an opinion on anything.
That's right.
But that you can, I think you can use the information to state your own opinion.
Mhm. I would think so too.
You just can't say, this, the town of Atherton supports X, Y, Z, and here's their statement, and you can say, I support X, Y, Z, and here's the supporting
You know,
information
I'm
I
not
have.
sure
I'll
we
read
should
it.
continue this discussion because we adjourned the meeting.
Okay.
Oh,
All right?
have you voted?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Amen.
Vote to adjourn
All right.
the meeting.
Now let's go to our.
That was a fast meeting, I like these. I hate it when we got 10 minutes to discuss it, 2 hours.
I don't know, how should we sound?
Have you ever noticed that? You've been in those operating. And, you know, I don't see it.
the rush going by so fast.
We gotta do something else.